Next, from the Illinois Municipal League in Springfield, we hear from mayors from around Illinois who say the state is attempting to take tax dollars that belong to local communities in an effort to fix the state's deficit. We'll hear what the mayors say would be the devastating impact on their communities should those tax dollars be diverted. This runs about 30 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Ray Muniz. I'm the mayor of the village of St. Jacob that is located in the Metro East region of the state. This year's president of the Illinois Municipal League, and I'm joined with several of my colleagues from across Illinois to discuss pension reform and some of the other actions that have come to light here in Springfield as far as the threat to our local distributive funds and things of that nature. Before we get started, I'd like to at least go around the room and let each one of the mayors introduce themselves and who they are their representative, where they represent. So we start with Scott.
Scott Eisenhower, Mayor, City of Danville, also First Vice President of the Illinois Municipal League Board of Directors.
Tom Hakes, Mayor of the City of Alton.
Jim Artis, Mayor of Peoria.
Luella Preston, Trustee Niles.
John Spring, Mayor of the City of Quincy, and also the Sergeant at Arms for the Municipal League.
Don Welbert, Mayor of Moline, Illinois.
Sandy Froome, President of Northbrook.
Robert Aboud, President Barrington Hills.
Karen Darch, President Barrington and Vice Chair of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus.
Mike Houston, Mayor of Springfield.
Chris Canning, President of the Village of Wilmette and President of the Northwest Municipal Conference.
Okay. So as you can see, we have a cross-representation of mayors from throughout the state. The issues that are before us are not only confined to one region. It affects each and every one of us in a dramatic way. We have home rule cities and non-home rule cities here, and some of the things that we're confronted with is particularly with the pension increases that we're confronted with every year. As a non-home rule city, I don't have the ability to go out and to raise taxes or raise funds to do this. So we've asked Springfield time and time again to help us with these issues. To the extent that part of our Save Our Cities agenda this year includes the ability for municipalities to ultimately file for bankruptcy if we're not able to get relief from Springfield on our bills. The bigger issue now is not only do we have continued cost to our pension programs, but within the last week or so there's been legislation and amendments introduced to where our local funds are again are being threatened. The corporate property replacement tax that they hit on last year that we were assured was only going to be for 1 year is now being threatened again. In addition, they're also talking about hitting our local distributive funds. These are things that our municipalities we budget for. We build them into our budgets every year, and we count on these revenues. The critical point I'm trying to make is we also balance our budgets every year, and we don't run deficits. And it makes it very difficult for us to continue to maintain the services that our residents expect and really deserve to maintain just the basic standards of living that they're used to. At this point, I want to turn the microphone over to Mayor Houston from Springfield, and he's going to talk on. Where'd you go, Mike? I'm sorry.
I'm hiding behind you. Well, first of all, thank you for joining us today. My name is Mike Houston, and I am the mayor of Springfield. Our community is no different than other units of local government in Illinois. We have had to battle the financial difficulties caused by the downturn in the economy over the last several years. In the 12 months since my election, Springfield has worked diligently to stabilize our financial position. It was done not through tax increases, but rather by reining in city spending and actually managing our budget. I strongly encourage the General Assembly to follow the same approach rather than sweeping funds away from other governmental units. I ask them to please work on getting their own financial house in order rather than taking a wrecking ball to the financial houses of other units of local government. The major reason that we were able to balance our budget was through the elimination of positions. We eliminated 46 positions that were filled, as well as a number of authorized positions, reducing our salary and benefits for this fiscal year by approximately $3 million. I am very concerned about the actions being proposed at the state capitol. Discussions about diverting the corporate personal property replacement tax to the teachers' retirement fund or freezing the amount of funding that municipalities receive from the local governmental distributive fund would devastate our budget as well as budgets of municipalities across the state. Our fiscal year began on March 1st, and those revenues are in our budget as they are in the budgets of local units of government across this state. These are revenues that municipalities have counted on for years. Taking revenue that belongs to our communities pays for essential programs, services, and personnel such as police and firefighters, and will only shift the state's financial burden onto local taxpayers, making it harder for municipalities to cover costs and address the runaway costs associated with public pensions. This is a Band-Aid solution that merely robs Peter to pay Paul and doesn't provide for real reform. If the General Assembly decides to divert that revenue, we would be forced to take drastic action. We would either have to raise taxes or lay off employees or do some combination of raising taxes and laying off employees. Add to that the General Assembly's inaction of any kind of long-term pension reform, and you can see how cities across Illinois are being squeezed. Municipalities cannot carry the load by themselves. We need to have meaningful reforms passed by the General Assembly that will preserve retirement security for our employees and retirees and protect our taxpayers. We have the other mayors here who would like to share some thoughts with you about the need for state government to responsibly resolve its financial issues without negatively impacting municipal budgets. I would now like to turn the microphone over to Mayor Jim Addis of Peoria. Mayor?
See if we make it. Yeah, Jim.
Thanks, Mayor. Jim Ardis, A-R-D-I-S. I haven't known Mike for more than 5 years, but yeah, that's okay. I would like to echo some of the comments made by our league president, Muniz, and Mayor Houston. It's really hard for us in the local cities who have struggled to balance our budget for the last number of very difficult years to now be under assault by the folks that represent us in Springfield, that we sent down here to represent our interests. Peoria, over the last 5 years, have addressed over $40 million in deficits that we're facing, and we've done it the same way as they've done it in Springfield, in Quincy, and the other cities. We've reduced staff. We've become more efficient in our operations. Over the last 5 years, we've cut over 20% of our workforce. Very difficult decisions. And the message that we're sending to our legislators in Springfield, and we hope the rest of them hear it today, is the money that they're proposing to take away from us is a direct assault on public safety in our communities. 80% of our operating budgets are in our people, and the large majority of that 80% are police and fire, public safety, the people that protect our citizens, the basic essential needs that they expect us at the municipal level to provide them, police and fire protection. We don't have any place left to go. It's going to be a cut in police and fire, and we are holding our state legislators responsible for any more potential cuts. We feel at public safety levels we're at the bare minimum right now. Last year, when they took money from us from the personal property replacement tax to pay the regional superintendents, they told us it was a one-time deal. They just needed to help to get through the budget last year. Well, here we are again, and we're not just talking about small amounts of money. If they look at taking our percentage of the personal property replacement tax, it's over $6 million to the city of Peoria. Any withholding of money from the distributive fund is going to be in the several $100,000 range. It's unacceptable. It's inappropriate. Springfield needs to quit balancing their budget with our wallets. We're doing a very good job balancing our budget under difficult circumstances. We'd like to ask Springfield to do the same. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Spring from Quincy. John.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. John Spring, the Mayor of the City of Quincy, and I can echo the words of the three previous mayors, and I'm sure the mayors and village presidents to follow. This has been a difficult 3 years for us. We have done everything we possibly can in our cities, and particularly in my city, which I can speak to here, to reduce our expenses based upon less revenue, most of it because of late payments from the state, because of taking LGDF monies or tampering with CPPRT monies. The real numbers for Quincy, if we do not have opportunity to gain in some of the growth and they freeze us with our LGDF, be about $100,000 for the city of Quincy. City of Quincy's population 40,633. We're proud of that. Our population went up this last 10 years. But that definitely impacts us. The CPPRT, because Quincy is an old city with a lot of industry and manufacturing back when that formula was first put together in the late 70s, $3.1 million we have budgeted with corporate personal property replacement tax. That would be a major hit to our budget. That would be 10% of my operating budget. I'm already operating with a budget that was similar to my budget in 2009. We have reduced by 35 personnel. I have reframed and been able to hold the line when it comes to public safety because it's so important. As a previous police and fire commissioner for 8 years before being mayor for 2 terms now, I know how important that is to a community, as Mayor Artis has said. I have no choice if we lose these revenues that'll have to go into our police and fire. And in our case, we have 5 fire facilities. We would close 2 of them. That would be 18 firefighters. We'd probably remove at least 7 or 8 police officers from our patrol. That's not healthy for any community to be forced to do that. That's why it's so important that we send this strong message to our legislators here in Springfield. I'm blessed. Senator Sullivan, Representative Tracy, who represent my area, are good people, and I work real well with them. They've responded to a lot of the things that I've asked them to do over all these years. I know they have a difficult task in front of them. But remember, we balance our budgets, as all of our mayors have said. We don't pretend to try to do things that we're not capable of doing. And we try our best to increase revenues through taxation. Actually, the last 2 years, with all the troubles we've had with revenue, we've reduced our tax rate for our taxpayers because we know the burden that is placed upon them. So this is really important that we get this message loud and clear to the people at the Capitol that please don't keep tampering with locally shared revenues. Don't go after revenues that have been promised and are part of the constitutional fabric of our cities. All you're doing is shifting your problems and putting them on the burden of the taxpayers at the local level. So I thank you very much. I'll turn it over to our Alton Mayor. And I think, Tom, you're coming up next. Yep.
Thank you. And thank you. I'd like to kind of echo what everybody else has said. I'm going to kind of zero in on the pensions a little more, but I'm going to give you some hard facts there, and make no mistake, this is reality. But the pension system we're working under today is not sustainable. It is totally broke. Communities are suffering financially, and without help and relief, make no mistake about it, you're going to see cities failing and filing bankruptcy. It seems as if our legislators do not want to face reality, or do they think we're a bunch of mayors that are crying wolf? This is a financial crisis of the utmost importance. I'm not so sure the pension plan can be fixed. I'm not so sure we shouldn't scrap it and start all over. I have some ideas on that which we don't want to go into today, but I'll touch on a little bit later of some ideas where I'd like to see the mayors incorporated into the system. New sources of revenue are not the answer. Common sense is. We would be in the same situation in just a few years. Every time we create new revenue, it just gets spent, and then 4 or 5 years down the road, we're going to be in the same boat we're in today. I have active firefighters and police taking reductions in their numbers. They're taking pay freezes, and they're being laid off, while retirees are getting 3% increases in pay. It pays to retire. People retiring at 50 or soon thereafter should at a minimum still contribute to their pension fund, at least until they're 62 to 65. I'm disappointed. I have never heard from the police or firefighters union. If I was a part of the union, I'd want to be part of the solution. And I don't see them stepping up forward and coming up with ideas to sustainable solutions where we can all work our way through this to where everybody comes out a winner. It is their numbers and their ranks that are shrinking. Just to say public safety will suffer does not cover it anymore. They used to cry to the people that, oh, public safety, we can't live without us. People have learned they can live without us. Just because we're a home rule city doesn't mean we can raise taxes every time somebody has their hand out. If a fire alarm or a police call goes out for help, everyone rushes to the scene. Well, these mayors, this group of mayors has been sounding the alarm for quite some time now, and nobody is responding to that call. Most of our problems were created right here in Springfield, and this is where our problems need to be addressed. I would like to see at least one mayor or more involved with every committee that is working on pension reform. Nobody knows better than this group right here of what it's like. You've got the citizens on this side, you've got the unions on this side, and you're the guy caught in the middle. So I would like to have some voice in that. Just to give you a quick idea, and I'll turn this over to somebody else, but my pension contributions from 2002 through 2009 went up 49%. And the schedule going out for the next 25 years, when you get around the mid-20s, 21, 22, my pension contributions are over $20 million. And the cities cannot sustain that. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Canning. I am the president of the Village of Wilmette, and I will be wrapping up, and then we'll open the floor for questions. The Village of Wilmette is located in the northern part of the state, and we belong to a council of government known as the Northwest Municipal Conference. It is a council of government made up of 42 cities, towns, and villages along the north suburbs and northwest suburbs, and we are one of the founding members of the Pension Fairness for Illinois Communities Coalition. We have been working across the street over at the Capitol trying to bring pension reform, public safety pension reform to Illinois for the last 3 years. And what is really heartening about this event today is all of the mayors who have joined me here today and many others that we have met during this struggle for the last 3 years believe as adamantly as we do that we need public safety reform because it is the best thing for our communities, our employees, our retirees, and most importantly our taxpayers. Now, as you've heard today, we have been dealing with problems across the street at the Capitol. Our constituents don't understand that. What they do understand is they expect us to be in a partnership with the members of the General Assembly. They elect us, just like they elect representatives, to represent their best interest. Unfortunately, there have been continual assaults on that partnership, and you've heard the mayors outline them. A tax on the personal property replacement tax, a tax on the local government distributed fund. And when we have sought pension reform, unfortunately our pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Now, rather than lament that, what do we want done? Well, it comes back to what Mayor Munoz said at the beginning. All of us balance our budgets. And so the easy way to think about this is in terms of a budget. You have your revenue side and you have your expense side. And so the message to the General Assembly is, number one, do nothing to local government revenues. Do not cut, do not cap the local government distributed fund. Do not cut, do not cap the personal property replacement tax. That will be the revenue side. And on the expense side, do not pass any legislation that increases the cost of local government. Think before you act. Will this legislation make it more costly for local governments to provide the essential services they are supposed to provide, whether it's in public safety or even in public works? Do not make it more expensive to fix roads, fix sewers. And stop yourself from passing that legislation. That's number one on the expense side. And number two, what we do on a local level, what we do every day, and the mayors have told you, is we deliver the essential services. We deliver public safety, fire, police, ambulance. But because we do that, our biggest cost is personnel. And obviously one of the largest cost drivers is pension reform. And therefore what we ask the General Assembly is to take up the issue of public safety pension reform for the downstate pension funds. That is every fund outside of the city of Chicago. And many of you were here a couple weeks ago when Mayor Emanuel was here talking about the need for pension reform for the city of Chicago. While their issues may be larger in magnitude, a dollar magnitude, than any of our communities, they are no more important than the issues we face. And therefore there are four issues we ask the General Assembly to consider. Number one, it has to be, the law needs to be changed and employees need to make a greater contribution. In a sustainable system, employer and employee make sure they contribute the same amount. I can tell you right now, and every mayor will back me up, that our communities put in far more than our employees do that. So number one, we need to right-size that contribution. Number two, as you've heard the mayors talk about, there's a 3% annual compounded COLA that is applied to these retirees. Therefore, they're making more money as a retiree than they were their last day as an active duty. We need to change that, and we need to right-size that. Also, you've heard the employees retire at a much younger age. It's probably a little bit archaic, but we need to change that retirement age. But we have to be smart about changing that retirement age. We know how important our employees are. We know how grueling the work they perform is. We've got to make sure that we don't pick an arbitrary number, but we have to have a data-driven number that makes sense for our employees and our communities. And last but not least, there's 638 pension funds outside the city of Chicago. We need to consider and look at consolidating those, because what we believe will occur when that happens is we will drive down expenses and therefore improve the health of the funds. And so in closing, ladies and gentlemen, our message to legislators are, remember, we are partners. We represent the same constituents. Do not try to balance your budgets on the backs of the taxpayers that we represent by making us have to tax them more. And what we really want to do is work together so we can provide fiscal security and stability for our retirees, our employees, communities, and most importantly, our taxpayers. So thank you very much for coming here. We've got mayors from around the state, so I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to step over, and then Ray, if you want to start handling this, and then if you have a mayor from a particular region you want to ask, please go ahead. So Ray, why don't you come on up? Excuse me.
We'll open the floor for questions.
The 638 public safety pension funds, so that would be police and fire. Are you recommending that that all be formed into one giant pool?
We are talking about looking at it for the purposes of trying to reduce the expenses and possibly get into products that the individual funds cannot get into right now, the investment products.
Should it all be one, like the IMRF is pretty much for every city?
Well, IMRF is that, and an IMRF type model is one model that should be looked at.
I think they've offered to look at police and fire pensions and they have. I believe.
So who would have to act? Would the legislature have to act, or would all your cities have to act?
Yes, the legislature would have to act.
I think to your point, I think that you have to remember that the key issue here is we don't set the rules about pensions. Across the street sets the rules, and then we get the bill. So if they don't reform the pensions, we continue to have to write the checks. The General Assembly has no incentive to do that, to stop themselves, because they don't have to write the bill.
Most of us, like our property tax, I can speak for me, and I'm sure the others can. We collect like $5.8 million in property tax. None of it goes to my general fund. It goes to police and fire pension, and for my library, and for any kind of bonding obligation. So we don't receive any money from property tax anymore to operate our cities.
Yeah. Do you know what you would want to raise the retirement age to? I know you said you wanted to pick a data-driven number. Well, what number would that be?
Chris, you want to?
I can't tell you what that number is. I know we raised it in the tier 2s, and we did that based on looking at when officers and firefighters typically retire, but then we also looked at disability rates and when the disability rates came in, and because different communities have, you need to have that much data to determine what it's going to be, but it's probably going to be something above 55 is going to be my guess. But when you hear about the teachers, 67, 68, we're not going to have police and fire at that age. And so that's why we say, let's look to see what people can be working at so that not only can they deliver the services, but at the same time they won't hurt themselves doing the services, and then figure out what the best age is.
At what point are any of the cities in danger of draining the entire pension pool and will be in a position where they will no longer be able to pay the pensions?
Scott, do you want to take that? Because your numbers have been
Confident said like some Chicago fire and police, I don't want to misstate it, but within about the next 10 years will spend their last dollar. I'm curious about how some of you are.
Yeah, and I think communities are getting there much faster. And the reason for that is exactly as Chris just talked about. We're putting more and more in, and the taxpayers are contributing more and more on an annual basis, and yet at the same time we're finding our funded obligation ratio decreasing on an annual basis. I'll give you an example. In the city of Danville, over the last 8 years, the amount of money that taxpayers are contributing today is 154% higher than where it was 8 years ago. At the same time, the obligation funded is 12% lower than where we were 8 years ago. 8 years ago, we were at 47% fully funded ratio. Today, we're 12% lower than that. So as you can see, the problem that we're running into is we're asking taxpayers to give more and more and more on an annual basis. At the same time, we're not gaining ground, we're rapidly losing ground. So we're going to get there, I think, much faster than perhaps even 10 years. The problem that we run into is then how we go about trying to fund that obligation. For the city of Danville, much like Quincy and much like other communities here, where we find ourselves is in a property tax levy, 50% of that is going directly towards public safety pension obligations. And that number is continuing to rise year after year. Danville's a little unique in the fact that 10 years ago, we used to actually put $1 million out of the property tax levy into the general operations of city government. Today, it's just the opposite. In order to maintain a reasonable tax rate for our citizens, what we've done is actually abate $1 million out of the general fund towards the property tax levy in order to help reduce that rate. We're looking at an obligation today. If pensions continue to rise at the rate that they are today, we will find ourselves 5 years from now at a property tax rate, if that's all we used to try to abate or combat that, at rather than $1.97 where it is today, to $2.30. So again, Terry, while that's a very long-winded answer to your question, I think the point is municipalities are getting there much faster because we no longer have that ability to keep pushing this obligation on the backs of taxpayers.